Well, so what are we gonna do today, Cousin PW?
The same thing we do every day, Melvin. Try to take over the neighborhood.
Hey y'all, Bloodwing here. Back to bring some grumpiness to your internet. This video is going to be a bit of an experiment, something that I've been wanting to try. And so I'm going to try out here, see how it works. I'll try to keep the explanation of what it is down as much as possible so I can get onto some actual subjects. But if you've followed me for a while, you probably know that I've never met a point I didn't like to make. Yes, it's true, I'm a little wordy. But I'll do my best at this. Those of you that have followed me for a little while know that I used to put out 4, sometimes 5 pieces of content a week. Plus going around and trying to get in whatever live streams I could on the weekends. At the first of the year, some real life events happened that has made that very nearly impossible, very difficult for me to keep up that kind of schedule. My son-in-law left my daughter with 4 young children. They all live with me, and so Papa babysits so that she can go out and earn a living and work and maybe make enough money to get out on her own one day. So there was a need there, and I fill it. That way she doesn't have to pay anybody or anything. But it did put a serious kibosh on my YouTube channel. There just was no way around it because I didn't have the time, and especially not quiet enough time to be able to record. And it still plagues me, although I have got back to at least doing a little bit of content. And there for a while I pretty much disappeared for almost 2 months, for about a month and a half. Which, thank you. If I hadn't said it before, I wanted to say thank you for those that stuck with me through that. I didn't lose any subs during that period that I could notice, and I appreciate it. I do, that you understood what was going on, and it's still going on. But I've been trying to figure out a way that I could get back to being more active, because I like doing this. So here's the idea that I come up with, and let me give a little bit of a lead in to it. I'm a baby boomer. When I was born in 1960, it was at the tail end of the period of what they called the nuclear family. Often 3 generations would live within the same household. You'd have mom and dad, their kids, and then you'd have the grandparents. Now, my grandparents did not live with me, but they lived very close, within a few blocks, both sets. And you were raised to have the utmost respect for older people. And in those situations, when grandma or grandpa got too old to be of any physical use on the farm or whatever the family business was, then it was their job to pass along the wisdom that they had learned to the next generation so that it wasn't lost. Now, I'm really not that old. I tease and play around with it, and it's kind of my shtick being an old man, but I'm quite a bit older than most people that do the kind of content that I do. The closest to me I can think of is Ranting Monkey. There might be closer, I'm just not aware of it. He's 42, so that puts him a good 15 years younger than me. Physically young enough for me to still be his dad. Phew. Wouldn't want to have been a dad at that age, but it could happen. I'm really not that old. 57's not that old. It's just shy of 6 decades. But in that time, I hope that I've learned a little something. A little bit. And what I'd like to do with this experiment is to pass along some of that wisdom. Now, this is going to be very low tech. There won't be any flashy graphics. Probably won't be my usual outro music or none of that. I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. It'll just be a picture, a constant picture, a static picture, and me talking. Very much a podcast style thing, or talk radio, if you will. Some people don't like long content, but this will probably be long, within the 45-minute to an hour range. But some people have said they do like it. They like to have things that they can set going in the background and do their housework or drive or listen to while they're at their job, if they're allowed to do that. And so this would be that kind of thing. You won't have to look at it because nothing will be happening on screen. Nothing. Just a picture, just my avatar is all that will be there. So you can set this going and going about your business. I don't know if it'll work. Probably doesn't fit with the YouTube algorithms at all, but I've been a stubborn guy. I just do what I want to do. And I feel that I can find time on most days to at least record this. It's my other content that does take more editing, more time to make, that I'm finding difficult to do under my situation. This I can just find 45 minutes to an hour to record, slap an avatar on it, render it, and it's out. And I can probably make daily content. Not that that's real important to me. It's not that, but during this period, this slowdown for me, I've had so much that I've wanted to say and can't, because I can't find the time to make a video on it. And this will be a way for me to get it out there. And so I hope it does go over. I don't know. We'll try it for a week or two, see what happens. If you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, hey, let me know that too. You know, I get it. A lot of people don't like longer content. And honestly, this will be longer content. Most times it's not. There may be days I won't even be able to do this. So understand, if it doesn't make it, that's what's happened. I can't guarantee what time of day it's going to come out. It'll come out on different times of the day, depending on what schedule my daughter works. Sometimes she goes in at 5 in the morning. Sometimes she goes in at noon. So it's going to dictate on when I can find the time to record it. So anyway, we're going to give this a shot. Okay? And try it out. Hopefully, I'll be able to pass little bits of wisdom to you. I'd like to think that the time for that is not past, that, you know, the older generation being able to pass on what they know to the younger generation. I hope that that's not dead and gone. So I hope I can give you things that you can use, that you enjoy. It will probably be about current events, articles, videos maybe that are recently out, videos from our side, videos from the other side, which will separate it from the content that I've done called the Grump of the Week, which is just whatever the heck I want to talk about, and isn't necessarily about SJWs or Black Lives Matter or transgenders or any of that. It's just whatever I feel like talking about. Now this will be more on point and on topic. I hope. I'll try to keep it there. But that's what this is about. If this kind of thing interests you, stick around with me. If it don't, my feelings aren't going to be hurt if you want to click off now. You know, or now that you know what it's going to be, save it for later when you got time to listen to it in the background, because this is what it's meant to be. Part of the idea I got, I will admit, from the live streams that Randy Monkey and Scribelight and SDA make. I will admit that I'm jealous of what they have there. They have a good team that's very interesting. They've got it narrowed down to a good format now. I'd like to be able to do something like that someday in the future, but I can't think right now how I would, given the time that I have, and I would have to come up with a team that has that kind of continuity with one another to be able to put out the quality content that I believe their streams are. I'm jealous of that, but the closest I can come to right now is this. Just me giving my opinion. So, having said that, now that you know what this is going to be about, And you may hear me puff or light on a cigarette in the meantime. Like I said, I'm going to keep this very low tech, as little editing as I can, so that I can get it out there. And like I said, it's not because, it's not because I think I've got to get stuff out there every day. It's just that I have so much to say, and I get frustrated when I'm not able to say it because of my time constraints. And this will help with that. So this is very much as much for me as it is for you. It gives me an outlet. Anyway, I thought for our first episode here, we would maybe talk about that. You know, I've heard that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And on that topic, some of my friends, YouTube friends, have put out content already. Miss Misa has done a very good video on it. Others, Jeff Holiday springs immediately to mind. I really thought his video on it was just excellent. And so the two things that I want to broach have to do with that. And the first thing is a breaking news story that we have, perhaps you have heard by now. If you haven't, I will try to remember to put a link to at least the first article that I seen on it. It's happened in the last, I just heard about it today, but I guess it went down on Saturday. A YouTuber that you may know as Russian Deadpool, or also known as Feminist Skeptic, was in the news. That's the fellow that, if you're not aware, and if you look up the link, it'll show a picture of him. It might spur your memory. If you're not real sure who he is, I remember seeing a clip of him on Bering's video once, and he usually does streams where he has two young girls draped on both his arms, if that spurs your memory at all. But he is a feminist YouTuber, and a lot of us know who he is. And we were very shocked to see that he'd made the news. There was a shooting out front of his home. A young woman was killed. At the point that I'm recording this, we don't know the identity of the woman. We don't know who she is or anything like that. So I don't want to speculate. I just hope it's not one of the girls that he had been streaming with. And he was arrested at the scene and taken to the hospital for observation. I would assume for mental health issues. They were observing him. But that's just an assumption on my part. Let me first say that we don't know if he's guilty or not. We just know that he was arrested in connection with it. This is for real. This is not fake news. It has been on several different sources and has been, I know personally and privately, that it's been independently verified by somebody that knows friends of his. So this is for real. This is true. And he's been arrested in connection to this murder. And the reason I bring this up in connection with mental health, it just goes to show you that you never know. And there's a story that I could tell. I'm not going to tell at this point, but I might at another date, where I was actually connected in a murder case, actually a serial killer that was considered the first internet serial killer. But that's a very long story that I won't tell right here and right now. But I'd had some contact with the FBI in that situation and so forth. Fortunately, I didn't have to go to court because they had enough information and enough evidence without my testimony to easily convict the person. But you just never know. You don't know. Sometimes you think you know these people that you see on the internet, on YouTube, and you get to feel like their family and like you really know them. And you really don't know. Yeah, oftentimes you can get a pretty good sense about, oh, this person's like that or that person's like this, you know. It's like I mentioned Jeff Holiday earlier. I've always got the sense from the first time I seen him that he was somebody that when I was 30 years younger, I would have probably had an awfully good time hanging around and partying. He just strikes me as the kind of person that I would get along very well with. We've all experienced that. We see somebody and we think we know them and we get the feeling that, hey, I would like this person, or hey, I would really not like this person. And I've seen a lot of people say about Feminist Skeptic that he always gave off bad vibes, and I have to admit I'm one of those people. The way that those two young girls always were hanging on his shoulder so lovingly and looking for attention and closeness is often, not always, but often a symptom of someone being at least browbeaten, if not physically beaten, into total submission. I always felt there was something more going on there than what we were seeing, and it honestly gave me the creeps. Now, I'm not making an accusation. I'm just saying that's the feeling I got off of him. You know, can't say that's what was going on. Don't know. You know, yada, yada. You get the picture. I'm just sharing my feelings, not really making an accusation here. But even for all that, I wouldn't have expected this. Now, my first impulse was to say, look at there. There's another SJW that's went off the deep end and they've hurt someone or they've ended up afoul of the law and you know, and especially with the video that Croughton T just put out just recently about why he doesn't like the SJW community, which I liked very much, by the way. With all that, my first impulse was, look at that, see? But you know what? It could happen to our side too. There are fringe elements. There are crazies on every side of any argument. There's the lunatic fringe. And so it could easily have happened to one of, quote, our own, unquote. Because you really don't know these people unless you've met them in real life. And even then, you may not know them. How many times in concerning a murder case, serial killer or whatever, do you hear interviews with family members and friends that say, well, that's not the person I know. I just can't believe they would do that. They're just too nice. That's just not who I know. You can't see into the deepest, darkest recesses of a person's mind. You can't always see what they're thinking, even if you're really close to them. Now, sometimes when you're really close to them, you don't see the forest for the trees. The signs might be there, you just don't want to see them. And I can understand that to a point. I'm a father. And there's things about my kids and my grandkids that, you know, aren't easy to take. They're faults. But we see that they do have faults. You know, but even for that, it's sometimes hard to admit that they have faults. We just don't know. Things like this can happen. Now, it's a tragedy. I feel for the young lady's family, whoever they may be, because we don't know who she is at the time I'm recording this. And, boy, I really hope you can't hear that hollering in the background. Grandkids are acting a fool. But we just don't know. And I want to avoid the impulse to point the finger and say, see, I felt there was something wrong with this guy. I knew there was something wrong. And you SJWs, you male feminists, you're all a bunch of hypocrites. And I think many of them are. But I'm not sure that this is proof positive that they are. What it does show is that people have mental issues. They have problems, regardless of which side of the coin that they fall upon. And this young man, if he did the shooting, obviously has some mental issues. It kind of feels like, having been taken to the hospital for observation, that that's probably what they're doing. It's for a mental evaluation, whether or not, I don't know, maybe suicidal, or maybe he's just out of control, or who knows. I can only speculate at this point. We just don't have enough information out there except for the bare basics. People, regardless of how well you think you may know them, have issues. Problem lies, sometimes they have these issues and they don't seek the proper help for them. Or if they do seek help, they only want to listen to those that tell them what they want to hear. I think that's what's happened to Milo Stewart, or whatever name she's going by at this point. I think that's one of the issues with Megan Gaines, and a lot of people that I see out there. And as human beings, that's a tendency that we have. We only want to hear that which makes us feel better. It doesn't ruffle our feathers. We often don't want to hear the hard truth. And I'm a person, in case you don't know, that I'm going to give you the hard truth. Don't ask me a question unless you want the real answer. Because I'll give you the real answer, even knowing it might hurt your feelings doing so. And in my opinion, a real friend is somebody that will tell you the truth, regardless if it's the truth that you want to hear or not. Now, maybe in this young man's case, there were people around him or people close enough to him that seen the signs better than I do. All I can judge him from, personality-wise, is from what I've heard on his live streams and stuff, just the feelings I get. I don't know him personally. You can't get to know them personally from them. Maybe they seen the signs. Maybe no one stood up to him and told him, hey, you need some help. Maybe they did. But maybe they didn't. I don't know. Anyway, maybe I'll keep us updated on this when more information is made available. There's just so very little, and that's all anyone knows about it, that he's been arrested in connection with this shooting. The other thing concerning mental health that I wanted to tell is my own story on this issue. I was raised by very old-fashioned parents, and I was taught from a very early age that you should be thick-skinned. You know, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And that's true. That you're thick-skinned. But I was also taught that you take care of your own issues. You pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. If you get sad, that feeling sorry for yourself is disgusting. And I still have an issue. When I see people that are wallowing in self-pity, it just wants to drive me up a wall. But I do have a little more understanding on it now than I used to. My entire life, I'd always prided myself on being a very strong-willed person. Sure, I'd had issues. I'd had some serious problems in my life from time to time, just like anybody else does. You know, regardless of what our problems are, there are problems, and to us, they're bad. They might not seem bad to someone else. Their problems might seem worse to them. But our problems will always seem bad to us. But I always prided myself on the ability to be able to take those problems in stride. You know, if life hands you lemonades, or hands you lemons, boy, messed that up. If life hands you lemons, you make lemonade. You know, that kind of thing. Just pull myself up by my bootstraps and keep going on. I was taught to see life not as an optimist, and to this day, bubbly people drive me up a wall. Not as a pessimist, because life isn't always bad, but as a realist, to see life as it really is, and then deal with it accordingly. If it's great, great. Fantastic. If it's not so great, oh well, it'll get better. Deal with it. I was raised very much as a realist, and I always prided myself on the ability to keep an even keel no matter what life threw at me. Even to the point that for most of my life, I didn't give much credence to medication for depression and so forth. I thought they were a crutch. I thought people that took these medications were just sissies, unable to handle their problems. And so they medicated. A few years ago, I got into a stupid argument, as so many arguments are, with 2 of my 3 children. As a consequence of that argument, they broke off all contact with me, and along with that, that also meant I had no contact to the involved grandchildren. It affected me greatly. It really got me down, and I struggled, and the more I tried to get on top of that, the harder to deal with it seemed to be. But I was, if barely, keeping my head above water with it and handling it the best I could. Then came what might seem to you, some of you, as a very simple matter, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. One of the things that I always enjoyed doing was playing games, specifically on Xbox, with my son. And he was one of the children involved in this. We spent many, many, many wonderful hours playing games and laughing and just hanging out and being around each other, playing games online on the Xbox 360. During this period of this argument, I turned on my Xbox 360 one day, and the first thing that greeted me was that he had unfriended me on Xbox. That hit me like a building falling on me. It may seem like a simple thing, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I sat in the middle of the floor, tough old bird that I am. Some of you have called me that, and maybe you're right. I sat in the middle of the floor and I cried. And I fell deep into a deep depression that I just could not seem to drag myself out of. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how strong I was, no matter what I told myself about how it would get better and that it would work out. Some way, somehow. I just couldn't see it then, but it would work out. I just couldn't pull myself out of that one. Such a simple thing just devastated me. And I was barely functional. Now, I know a lot of you have had experience with depression. A lot of you, perhaps during your younger or teen years. And I went through all the typical angst that every other teenager had. But I was generally able to handle it in some way or another. This happened much later in my life than some of you had your issues. It was right about the time I turned 50, if I recall correctly. And it just really put me down, and I couldn't seem to find a way to pull myself up. I couldn't find the handholds to climb out of that pit. Now, most of you know that I have a disease that takes constant care, or should take constant care. Thank you, Obamacare, for taking that away from me, but that's a whole another stream. And so I had regular office visits to be checked up, and at my next regular office visit of that event, at the end of the visit, the doctor said, "Is there anything else that you want to talk to me about? Is there anything else happening that we haven't talked about?" After looking at all the normal, regular stuff, taking the pulse on my feet and the blood pressure readings in my legs, and I have to go through all those things when I go see them. And talking about my cholesterol levels and all of that. I'm genetically, it's not diet, it's genetically predisposed to high cholesterol. So that makes it very, very difficult to fight. Even on medication, it stays high. But on the spur of the moment, that little voice in the back of my head said, tell him, talk to him about it. And maybe he can refer you to somebody we can talk to. And before I gave myself a chance to think about it too much, because I knew I'd talk myself out of it in that old upbringing, that raising, that you don't talk about problems with strangers, would rear its ugly head if I gave it time. And I said, "Doc, I think I'm suffering with depression." And I went through the story with him. And he listened. And he said, "Well, do you want me to refer you to someone that you can speak to?" And I said, "Well, not really. Not at this point. It was hard enough for me to even say anything to you. Is there anything else we can try?" So he gave me a lot of information on depression and what have you. And he asked, "Do you want to try some medication?" And I almost said no, because like I said, I always felt that was a crutch. But I thought, maybe if it can help, I'm desperate enough to try anything, and I was desperate. And I said, okay. And so he wrote me out a prescription. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of it right offhand. But thankfully and luckily, we hit upon the right medication the first try. It immediately helped. And I didn't feel like, I didn't feel like I was out of my right mind. I felt like I could think very clearly. I didn't feel drugged up. But it certainly helped me keep the depression at an even keel. And we have since made our peace. My kids now talk to me, and I have access again to most of those grandchildren. And I have long since, years ago, got to the point where I no longer have to take that medication. I can handle it all on my own. So I guess the moral, or what I'm trying to get at with this, is there's nothing wrong with being strong. And yes, I believe there are people out there that are too quick to just make a mountain out of a molehill and make their rough situations worse than they really need to be. I'm not advocating over-medicating or depending on medication. Not advocating at all. But if you're having trouble, if you're struggling emotionally, mentally, with depression or whatever the case may be, tell somebody. Seek help. Take medication if that's what helps you. Reach out. If it's more than you can handle alone, then don't. There's nothing wrong, and I had to find this out the hard way. After 50 years, there's nothing wrong with admitting, I just can't take it anymore. I need help. And it certainly worked out in my case. I know that everybody's case is going to be different than mine. Maybe medication doesn't work for you. Maybe your depression is more serious than mine was. This is just my experience with it. Excuse me, again, getting a really dry throat. So I'm going to be ending this here pretty soon, which is going to probably put it in about the 40-minute range. So if you need help, find it. If you see people in your family that need help, talk with them. Try to convince them to get the help that they need, or try to help them the best that you can. Now, none of this is going to be effective in every case. There are some people you just can't reach. There are some people that just will not take your help no matter how much you try. I understand this, but you don't know till you try. So if you need help, find it. If you see people that you love, your friends or family that need help, try to help them. Try to get them to get the help they need. And try the best that you can to get through life. Life is hard, and it's going to be hard. If anyone ever told you that life was easy, they're a big fat liar. Life comes with problems, and we are all going to have our own problems. It's how we deal with those problems that makes the difference. This young man in the earlier articles, if he is guilty of the shooting, handled it in all the wrong ways. Harming someone else, in any case, is never the right answer. I know from experience. So anyway, that's what I have for Mental Health Month, Awareness Month. Not sure yet what I'm going to do with tomorrow's episode of this, but we'll figure it out between now and then. Hope I didn't wear you out. Hope I didn't put you to sleep, unless that's what you wanted this for. And then if it is what you wanted, was a sleep aid, then you're welcome, I guess. But anyway, that's it for today. And as always, get out of my yard.